For some years during the war, the BBC and the Voice of America broadcast on shortwave to all over the world in many languages, including German, to Germany. And sometime around 1943 or so, the Canadian government, Mackenzie King, decided that Canada should do the same thing, that it was the proper thing for an independent nation like Canada to do that too. So they slowly organized a service. They got hold of the CBC, had a part in it, and so did the Department of External Affairs, which was responsible for what is called policy. And in December 1944, test transmissions began. And the German section consisted of two men, both from the internment camp, Helmut Blume, a little older than I, the musician, and I. The two of us began broadcasting to Germany in German from December 1944 on. I did it for 9 years until 1953. We had two broadcasts a day, one in the early morning, that was lunchtime in Germany, and one at around noon, that was dinner time in Germany. And my friend Blume, who was my boss until 1946, when I succeeded him, but was much better than I. He was older when he left Germany than I, and his German was much better than mine, and he was a terrific writer, and it was a joy to work with him. I had to learn a lot. My German was not that good. I spoke German better than English. But I'd never written a news bulletin in German. I never had any journalistic experience. I was 15 when I left Germany. So I spoke and wrote kind of schoolboy German. And I had to learn how to write a news bulletin. I had to learn how to write a talk. And I learned all this on the job. And after a few weeks, a third man, also from the camp, 3 refugees, ran this service to Germany in wartime. And it was part of psychological warfare. It was part of warfare. I was totally delighted to be able to do that. It made me feel that I was at last being able to make a contribution to the war, and we did. And all of us in this international service of the CBC, which was then brand new, which we built, thought, I think with some justification, that we were doing something very important. And it was very Canadian. We learned a great deal about Canada and began to feel Canadian. It is remarkable how quickly we became kind of miniature Canadian nationalists. Because we didn't want to be told that we were doing propaganda. We were giving information about Canada, and therefore we learned a lot. We learned a lot also about the technique of broadcasting. We learned how to write little documentaries, how to produce things. And very soon after the war, we made contacts with German radio stations, and we made contributions to German educational programs, which we recorded them on disc, little half-hour plays, on documentaries, with written like a drama, with voices, and all about Canada. And we produced those ourselves in the studio, and it's all kind of custom-made, handmade broadcasting, but the Germans loved it. In 1946, Blume went to Hamburg and made an arrangement with the educational division of the German radio. And then in 1948, I did the same thing. I followed it up, and I did the rounds to various German stations, and we made this available. we were very pleased with ourselves being able to. We were ahead of we were ahead of the Voice of America. We were ahead of the BBC also did it, but I think we did it on a more ambitious scale. So we established a presence in German broadcasting. Very nice. We broadcast to Germany. Of course, we had no idea whether anybody listened to us. It was highly, highly illegal in Germany during wartime until May 1945 to listen to foreign broadcasts. But after that, of course, it became legal, and by then we proceeded from psychological warfare to what was called re-education. It seems very presumptuous now that we, sitting in Montreal on Crescent Street, had the gall to call ourselves instruments of re-education, trying to educate the Germans to become good Democrats. We kind of believed it and we kind of didn't believe it. But we did our best and we took it extremely seriously. And it was also very, very exciting for many other reasons. For example, there were German prisoners of war. Altogether, 32,000 German prisoners of war were in various Canadian camps until 1947 or something like that. By then, they were all sent home. And we went to the camps with the CBC recording equipment. Not equipment the way we know it now, little miniature recorders. Huge, huge, huge production on large discs. When we made discs with the prisoners, and they sent messages home, we broadcast them on shortwave, and little discussions, and the various camps. And there were some Nazi camps and some camps where the Canadian authorities thought the prisoners were already good Democrats. And we went there. And I remember one time we went to a huge camp in Medicine Hat, another time when I got to the West. And there were, I don't know how many thousand, 8,000, so a huge camp. And they had an orchestra. And we recorded, I still remember what they played. We recorded the orchestra playing Tchaikovsky. And it was, we did it as we recorded it. It was not a professional recording job. It was not bad at all. And I was very, very pleased when 10 years later or so, I got a visit in Toronto at the CBC from some German immigrant who remembered my name and who said he remembered my voice. And he came to see me in my office in the CBC, and he had a bottle of scotch as a gesture of gratitude for having re-educated, in quotation marks. And we had a lovely time, and we had a few drinks, and it was terrific. Now, I must also say that that time in Montreal was most enjoyable. Not only because of a general kind of optimism after the war. Things were looking up. But also the social life, with all the others, with the Czechs and the Dutch and many of the English section and the French. We had very good relations, made a point of it, with our French partners, friends, and we spoke some French, and had a very good time, lots of parties, and met a number of people who then became quite well known in Canadian broadcasting, such as Bob Allen, Earl Burney, the poet. He had been an intelligence officer, I think, during the war. First we met him, he was still in uniform. And Mabel Moore, all kinds of people who we met in those years professionally, who then later on became our friends. And in Montreal, there was a very active social life in those years after the war, a kind of bohemian. And I say bohemian, we associated with musicians and artists and poets and broadcasters, all kinds of people, at lovely, lovely parties. And when I think of it now, And sometimes I don't think of it very much because so much has happened since, but I do think of it. And when the subject comes up at a party, say, I usually say, I happen to have been Canada's most effective broadcaster in those years. I told the Germans, put down your arms, give up. And they listened, and on May the 6th, 1945, they did so.